This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description. Hello and welcome everyone to our 143rd session of HalloCasa. My name is Michael and today I'm talking to Patrice Choffat, a true game changer in the real estate industry. Patrice is the founder of Bestag AG, a company based in Zurich, Switzerland, that's helping property sellers achieve an impressive 6% higher sale price on average, with a robust background in strategic management and performance optimization across companies like Zurich, North America, and Boston Consulting Group. Patrice has a wealth of experience in building businesses from the ground up. Patrice, I'm really pumped to have you on the show. I'm really excited to hear your story. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, Michael. I'm super happy to be here as well. And who should I say I am? I'm a Swiss guy who studied finance and then went into strategy consulting. And in my 13 years of consulting, I was Mr. Salesforce Effectiveness, Mr. Distribution Optimization, which basically means nothing else but how can we get salespeople in banks, in insurances, in the financial services industry to sell more, to sell better, to sell the products that are most profitable for the company. And so this was my background. And then I discovered real estate agents. And my first hunch was that it was not possible, but it was incredulity. I had a friend when I was working in Chicago that wanted to sell his apartment. And he told me that he was a little bit disappointed because the agent wanted him to accept a price that was a little bit below what he was expecting. And therefore, I told him, bring all your stuff. We'll have a drink after work, and we'll look into all those documents. And I discovered the world of real estate agents, and I fell in love with the potential for improvement. And that was 2015. And for 2 years, I mulled over it, and I thought about it, and I thought that I should start a company. And my wife basically vetoed us starting this company in the US. But then in 2017, we came back to Switzerland, and I started the company that is now Bestag Incorporated, which helps people who sell their house, sell their property, sell it at the optimal price.
I have one question, first and foremost. How is, for the people who don't know how it works in Switzerland, who is paying as a client, the purchaser or the seller, and who's basically incentivized regarding basically both sides of the coin?
Yeah. So in Switzerland, the seller pays the agent. And the seller chooses the agent because it's a seller's agent market. There's practically no buyer's agent. I know in the US, buyer's agent are extremely common. But in Switzerland, it's the seller's agent, and the seller pays the fee. I would argue that it doesn't really matter if the seller or the buyer pays the fee, because in the end, you have a buyer, and they're going to put $1 million on the table to buy a house. And this is their costs, and they're going to be admin costs next to it, but they're tiny. And if there's 30,000 in agent commission, which is the regular rate in Switzerland, 3%, then the seller will get 970. If the buyer was to pay the agent's fee, then the buyer would just offer 970 and know that they have to pay 30K on top of it. And so we think that seller pays, buyer pays, splits halfsies. It doesn't truly matter because the spread is in between what the seller gives and the buyer gets. The issue with the buyer paying the agent, which some agents in Switzerland, some startups in Switzerland have said, oh, we will be the free real estate agent because the buyer will pay. as a seller, if you choose such an agent, you lose the control over the fee, because suddenly once you have found the buyer, the agent takes 4%, and then in the end you have 960 in your pocket instead of 970, because you lost the control over the amount that is being paid by allowing the agent to say, no, the buyer will pay, and then you don't care about it anymore. So you lose the control. It's probably even a bad idea to have a buyer pays the agent system.
In the end, your value proposition attracts mainly the seller. You are addressing the seller and saying, hey, we ensure that you get the best for your money, or you get the best selling price, basically.
Yes.
How do you address this one and also market this one in the entire landscape, real estate landscape?
So that's also something that I really like to talk about. Many people say, oh, isn't it antisocial? You're pushing the prices upward. Any property that's on the market can be bought. No one is ever forced to buy. So in a sense, the more properties come on the market, the better the options of the buyers, and the buyers can just take it or leave it. For the sellers, if you're a seller, you own a property and you want to sell, you're not forced to sell, but if you want to sell, and quite often if you want to sell, it's because you want to buy something else, or if you're retired and you're a couple and your wife has just had hip replacement and you kind of need to sell because she can't climb the stairs to go to the bedroom anymore, and therefore you want to sell, and that's at this moment you need a provider who's going to help you, and they need to help you sell. And if you want to be helped to sell, what will they do for you? What does a provider do for you? Because many people belittle the work of real estate agent, and I contend that it's one of the most complex ones, right? You need to value the property. How much is it worth? You need to market the property to make it look as valuable as possible, and then you need to be negotiating with potential buyers. And in those three aspects, you have a range of outcomes that are possible. You can undervalue, you can overvalue, you can market it, and it's worth $1 million, but it looks like it should be worth 800K because it's so poorly prepared. Or it's worth $1 million, but your presentation makes it look like it's worth 1.2, and therefore, so there's a range of outcomes. And also in the negotiation, obviously, the agent has a huge impact on the outcome of the negotiation if they can tease the buyer into paying more, or if they just limit themselves to bargain their seller downwards because they want to get the deal done. So a real estate agent will do that. And as such, when a seller wants to be helped, the choice of the provider is extremely important. And I would say it's the fourth step upstream from the entire performance of the agent, of proving that they're qualified and obtaining the mandate. That is yet another negotiation that the agents have to do all the time, acquiring the mandate.
It's very interesting. You just used a keyword which was belittling real estate agents. You actually show with your business model that the entire concept of disintermediation of the real estate agent, everything is, one-click purchase and stuff, is basically proven wrong, because what you do, you have an entire database of maybe around like 10,000 agents in Switzerland, and you say you are able to pinpoint exactly which agent is probably, or which 3 to 5 agents you're presenting them to the potential client. Say those are potentially the best ones who are top performing and able to market it as such, so that you basically get the most of your money. Do you agree with that, or do you think also the trend is actually going away from real estate agents and this craft is being disintermediated?
I love the question, obviously. No, no two properties are exactly the same. It's maybe not entirely true in Dubai, where you mostly have, high rises and 34C is very, very close to being 33C. Let's just admit it. But in Switzerland, at the very least, no two properties are alike. And yes, there's also towers, like high rises, but they're the exception rather than the norm. And the holding pattern of Swiss people is they hold their property for 25 years, and therefore the market is not so liquid, right? There's 4% of the market will be sold or transacted any given year. And it means every property is different and there's no standard pricing. And therefore, the buyer is always going to make a concession. Every single buyer that I've seen wants something that is quiet and roomy and has, the sun in the morning and the sun in the evening and is close to the forest, but is, a skip and a hop away from the train station and, has a convenience store next door. It doesn't exist. So buyers always make concessions and buyers have a budget. And so buyers have a maximal budget that they're willing to pay for any given property. They have a max budget intrinsically, there's only so much I can afford, but there's also for any given property, they look at it and they say, oh, for this, I will never pay more than 1.2 million. So we need to do the intellectual exercise to say that for any given property for sale, among all the buyers, there is one buyer that has the max willingness to pay. And not only you need to identify this person, but you need to find out that price and you need to find out that it's them, negotiate them all the way up to that price. So big scoop, it never happens. It never happens. No one gets that, or, very, very, very few people actually get the top, which also means, and it's the same with sellers. Sellers will sell a property at $1 million, but deep down, in their guts, they were ready to sell at 930, or maybe 900. But they did the valuation and they looked at the portals and for them, their reference price in their mind was, I think it's worth $1 million. I want to sell it for $1 million, but I'd be willing to sell at 900. So we've just established there's a huge bid-ask spread. It's like buying and selling railroad shares in the 1880s, 150 years ago, where there was not one price. You could hear that there had just been a fire at the station in Boston, and then suddenly the railroad prices would come down 20%, but it would come down 20% with the guy who knows, and the guy who doesn't know next door would still buy them at 100. So there's a huge bid-ask spread. And this bid-ask spread is by definition negotiated. Not every property has 5 potential buyers who have announced themselves, and you can run a very clean auction, and it's going to be an optimal auction because you have all the buyers who are more or less in the ballpark, and you do 3 rounds, and therefore you arrive at the perfect price. This is not the way it works, right? And in theory, if you could identify all the properties that will have 5 or more buyers very close to the intrinsic price, and then maybe you could automate. The fact is, no, it's negotiation. And if it's a negotiation, if you negotiate directly, the concessions you do are binding, and the concessions your buyer does are binding. If you have a middleman as the seller, the concessions the buyer makes are binding. The concession of your proxy, they're not binding because the proxy did them. So, the buyer says 900, your agent says no, $1 million, and they talk about for an hour and they land on 950, and the agent says, oh, I need to check with the seller, and they can come back and say, well, the seller actually, he hears us, but he still thinks it's worth $1 million, so he will give it to you for 980. So this is very well known, right? This is why the head of states do not bargain trade agreements against each other. They have like a person below, and they try to extract mini concessions, and then they go back and they say, oh no, my concession is not valid. Is yours valid? Yours should be valid. And they go forever, because that's the way negotiations happen. So if you have a proxy, a negotiation happens better. Plus experience, patience, and so on and so on and so on. You're going to want to have an agent who negotiates for you, because the outcome will be better. Under a number of assumptions, outcomes will be better. If you're well informed about the price, if you don't have time pressure, and so on and so on. So if it's a given that it will be humans negotiating the final price, then the only question is, that human who negotiates for the seller, who is employing them? Are they working for big agency co? Are they independent people, but under big brand co? You know, we all know those multinational brands that are really a franchise for the brand, and maybe they have the same CRM, and maybe they have the same branded materials, but they're really one or two man shows in every given location. Or they can be completely independent people, or, you know, two guys who are working for big brand and who are now independent. Who is the person who is going to be working for the seller? Who is going to pay them? You know, are they compensated by the agency, and the agency makes the contract and gets the money and gives only a cut? Or are they getting all of it? What's their incentives? This is the critical question for real estate agency. Once you have arrived to the finding that it needs to be a human, how do you control the human? How do you get the best possible human? How do you make them as performant as possible? How do you align their incentives with the incentives of the seller? And this is how we get to Bestag, if you will. Because you are coming from we have a database, we know how to crunch it to identify the 3 best agents for any given transaction. And then we bring them so that they do the valuation. So we get 3 valuations of any given property, and they will evaluate as high as possible in order to get the mandate. This is only human. This we know already from the dynamics of the non-Bestag market, if you will. And then in the end, once you choose one, that's the kicker. That's where I came from when I founded Bestag. You need to do pay for performance. You need to align the incentives of the agent with the incentives of the owner. And there, I'm going to take just a little bit of math for everyone, but it's real estate math people will understand easily. If you want 3% on $1 million, it's 30K. If you do a horrible sale at 900,000, it's 27,000 of compensation. If you do a fantastic sale at 1.1, it's 33,000. The difference between 33,000 and 30,000 and 27,000 is much too small. The variable pay, the marginal pay for better performance is much too small. Or as we say under microeconomists, because that's what I studied in the end, the pay is not elastic to performance. So how do you change this? And by the way, very interestingly, if you look at scientific papers about real estate agents, and there's about 20, which is interesting because there's about 20 million about stock trading, and stocks are worth less than properties in the aggregate. But if you look at the theory, there's many papers from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, and they always say this. The average pay needs to be high enough that the agent wants to do the deal, but it's the marginal pay that is most critical. I go back to our example of the $1 million property. If you can tell that a property is worth $1 million, and you know that it's worth $1 million, and this is a science by itself, an art and a science by itself, but if you know it's worth $1 million, You want to be paying 3% for $1 million, but you want the deviation from $1 million to be at 10% or 15%. So you do a bonus malus system where the agent will get 15% of the deviation, which means for $1 million, they get 30,000. For 1.1, they get 45,000. And for 900K, they get 15,000. The variability means that the agent will actually try to get your price, bargain better for you, tell you to wait for another buyer. Oh, there's still 2 buyers who have visited and who are thinking about it. We have an offer at $1,050,000. Wait. Which also means they are working hard for you. You can trust them. If they say sell at $1,050,000, you can trust them, because if they could get $1,080,000, they would go get it. If they tell you to sell at $950,000, you can also trust them, because believe me, if they could get their full compensation, they would try to do it. So you can trust them. They work hard. And that's where the third point of the magic happens. When they evaluate, and there's 3 agents in a region that evaluate your property as high as possible to get your mandate, if they know that they're going to have to deliver that price, they will tell you the highest price possible while still realistic enough that they will get it. So it means this performance pay also acts as a truth serum during your tender with the agents. And this is the magic. This is where the magic happens. You will know very reliably the value of your property, and you will have one of the 3 best agents marketing your property, and they will try as hard as possible.
You're basically a market maker in the real estate industry. And sorry to interrupt, but it's very, very interesting. And you are mentioning so many things. And I want to quickly pause here. You're basically a very interesting market maker, also incentivizing the agents, saying, okay, basically we have like a progressive, or as you say, like bonus malus system in order to incentivize them properly. I am very curious about actually the fact that isn't there big data tools out there, and can I not just like look online and say, okay, you know what, like I live in zip code XYZ and this is what I should get. I assume there is, and it's actually then even interesting to see, even though the market is sort of transparent, there's still so much of leeway and potential that I can still via my skills can bump up this price, because I am an expert in this region. I know how to market it, and I know how to stage it and to really make the most out of it.
It's the best. So you're acting. I have also a number of things that I want to say, but the first thing is big data is out there in the US. In the US, the tax value of properties and in its history going back to 1980s is public. Any transaction value is public, and Americans sell their homes, in a 10 to 15 year cycle. So there's even on a per capita basis, much more transactions. So you can know pretty much. You go on Zillow. This is not commercial. And you get the Zestimate, and it's pretty much there. In Switzerland, there is no such thing. All the actual transaction prices are secret. They are with the tax authorities, with the banks who provide the mortgage, and otherwise with the buyers and the sellers. So yes, the banks do pool them. They pool them in an anonymized fashion to have the bank pool of data that they sublicense to hedonic valuation providers. So think of it as little companies that just basically take that data and do multiple regressions to no end in order to value the properties. And then they relicense that to the banks so that the banks can do valuations to provide the mortgages. So let me tease you with a little test. The 2 leaders for these hedonic valuation models in Switzerland are being used by 90% of the banks. And there's 5 providers of those models. 3 are more or less incumbents, and the last 2 have been created in the last 5 years. But the 2 leaders are really the leaders. We use both of the leaders for every one of our clients. And so we've done the twin evaluation about 700, 800 times by now. And we do it every day, 10 times for the online queries. So we have a lot of experience on this. On average, how far apart is the price given by model A and model B? What do you think?
10 to 20%, which is probably a lot or too much. I don't know.
It's 11%. So your intuition is very, very good. Now, the point there is an 11% discrepancy means that there is no such thing as a pricing. And now let me give the Swiss perspective there. In Switzerland, you don't need to pay down your mortgage. You need to pay it down until it's 2/3 of the value, and then you can just leave it there. So if I take our $1 million apartment, Swiss people will leave 660K of mortgage on it because they can deduct the interest of the mortgage from their taxes. So people leave 660. So you have $1 million. And now you have 2 models, and one of them tells you 940, and the other one tells you $1,050,000. It means your own funds, and I'm not going to talk about the transaction cost here, but your own funds are somewhere between 280 and 390,000. So this is huge. So you can't say big data provided me with the valuation. And this was my first instinct, was with big data, we'll get the price, because I really wanted to implement this bonus malus system. And then I realized the price that you can determine with the machine is so unclear that we need to call the 3 best possible specialists for the region to also evaluate. And they need to evaluate honestly. And that's how we came up with this entire system. In order for them to evaluate honestly, they need to have a push upward and a financial incentive downward, right? And this gives us this balance. We have the most precise evaluation in Switzerland by a mile, because it's being done by 4 people. You know, Bestag, the Bestag advisor, does the 2 hedonic ones, the bank mortgage evaluations, and the 3 best possible agent for the region do an evaluation on the back of what they know. They have similar objects for sale right now. They have a number of buyers who are looking for, that 3-bedroom, 120 square meter apartment right now in this zip code, and therefore they know how much it's worth. Now, this is how you get to the valuation, and you can still beat that. You can still beat it, because even the valuation established with this competition of agents, once they realize that they have the incentive, they work twice as hard than on any other mandate they have, and they end up beating it. So this is one of those things, right? And there was a scientific paper from the guy who wrote Freakonomics, the book Freakonomics, they did a study in the US in the early 2000s about real estate agents selling for themselves versus real estate agents selling for clients. And for themselves, they would get 3% more in the sales price, and they would leave the property another 10 or 12 days on the market, which basically means agents know how to influence the final price in the transaction through patience, through negotiations, but they don't do it for their clients. And the finding of that scientific paper is congruent with what we see in the market. If an agent is incentivized with a little bit more of the marginal price they can negotiate, then they negotiate better and harder, and they will say, no, wait. We have that other person who also visited last week. We can't quite shake hands with this person yet. And just that message makes the person who's negotiating say, no, I'll give 25,000 more, but now over.
Let's do it, yeah.
So it's very interesting. You asked the question before, and I'm sorry, I'm a little bit monologuing. Jump in when you want, huh? You asked the question before, how do we find the best possible agents? Well, for this, we use the listing websites. And when I started the company, I didn't have the entire tech we have now. But since 2018, we've been crawling the listing websites and collecting every single listing. And by crunching this database, we could now tell, the track record for agent X. And we're talking about Toby X, because Toby X used to work for Big Co, and then they were a franchisee at Remax, and now they even left Remax because they were paying too much, and now they're completely independent and they're Toby X Real Estate, right? And for those people, we know exactly where they are specialized geographically, because any agent's portfolio looks like an atom, right? There's a core, and then there's a lot of spread all around. We know how long they market in general. We know their success rate, because that Parkside Drive 525, it was on market with Anna, the real estate agent, and then it was not on the market anymore. And 2 weeks later, it was on the market with Toby X. Toby X ended up selling it, but Anna, she didn't. We know the success rate. You know the number of price adjustments the listing went through before it was sold. And so as you look at all these drivers that you know about every real estate agent, you know how much they're listing for their core, how much they adjust the price, the average price per zip code versus benchmark that they bring the stuff out at. You may not know the exact transaction price of any given transaction, but in aggregate, the track record, now we have 6 years of data, we can identify the best agents in any one given region. And the fun part I like to tell is, when I started, I didn't have the tech. I would just go on a listing website and look for an object within 5 kilometers within 10-15% of the about price and so on. I would see 130 listings, and of those 130 listings, 80 would be with an agent that was based far away and that had only one listing in that radius. And then maybe 20, 25 would be with an agent that has 2. And then there would be those 4 or 5 agents that had 4 or 5 that were very local. And this is very consistent, and it's always the case. For any given region, you've got a couple of the best guys, but they only, you take the 5 best guys and they only have 25% of the market. So it means that, basically 80% of the people who market their property market it with an agent who's not one of the best ones in the region. And this is crazy if you think about it.
Interesting. If you allow me to give this quick comment, it's actually interesting because this goes also a little bit into the value proposition of HalloCasa, because I think that you need the local agent who knows the market. This is the key. He knows the barber, he knows what's going on in the neighborhood, he knows exactly the ins and outs. And this is implicit knowledge which you don't have anywhere in any database. It's actually confirming what I presume, and therefore you say your KPI or your heuristic you're using in order to qualify which agent is the best is basically the most local one, the real one who knows and who has like many properties. Am I correct, or is that something else?
There's more drivers than that, but portfolio is a core aspect of it. And even though listing websites exist, people still fail to select an agent on the back of their portfolio specialization. So it's very weird, but it gets back to how agents acquire business. And I like to talk about real estate agents. They're quite often great people in a horrible system. Mm-hmm. And we work with real estate agents who are top in their market. So in the last 6 years, 7 years, I've met hundreds of real estate agents, quite literally hundreds. And I've been very impressed by many of them. And I'm very disappointed that they have such a bad reputation. But it goes down to, it's a lot of great people in a horrible system because they're incentivized to lie. If you're a real estate agent, you're being paid to lie. It's a little bit of a shortcut, but the point is, if anyone tells you, my auntie is moving, you should help her. No real estate agent says, oh, but your auntie, she lives in Basel. This is 60 kilometers from here. I have sold something last year in Basel, and 3 years ago, I've also sold something in Basel, but I'm not very specialized. Said no real estate agent ever. They say, yes, I am a specialist. I've sold in Basel. Recently, I've sold 2 properties. No, you're not specialist. But they still say yes, because you don't turn down business, because it's high-ticket business, and because the business that real estate agents do, you need to realize in Switzerland, with the compensation that they get, if you are just a one-man show, you would get somewhere between 8 and 10 mandates per year and close 5 or 6 of them, and you'd be making a good living. So you're not turning down someone who says, my auntie is selling, I want you to sell it because, I trust you. So the acquisition of the agents leads to the fact that their portfolio is like I mentioned before, an atom, right? There's a core where you do a lot of your business and you get some local referral. And then there's all your network acquisition. And it just happens that the auntie of your best friend, she lived, far away from you, but you're still selling their house.
It's actually going in, sorry for the self-promotion, but it actually goes into another value proposition, which I'm pursuing with HalloCasa regarding the referral B2B. Real estate agent, if I have a secure system to say, you know what, I'm not an expert in Basel, but I put it into HalloCasa, I forward it to an agent, I can 1% make sure that I get my split. We make 50-50 because I bought the agent, I also accompany a little bit, but let me work with a local agent. And I think this basically confirms it, correct?
And absolutely it does. And you know what? The leading CRM in Switzerland for agent, like is an SaaS for agent, has that functionality as well. And what was very interesting is when I was, clicking through in HalloCasa, it was very similar. What there's in that CRM and what's in HalloCasa is extremely similar. It's yes, we have an agreement for a split, and you could either you do the digital sign that there's a split, or you can upload a PDF, never mind. And then there's very simple rules, right? It's a split rule, or it's a case-by-case split rule, or it's a flat fee referral rule, but there's only so many rules. And 50-50 is the absolute most common one, right? Because there is something in behavioral finance, which is, I love behavioral finance. I'll talk about it a lot, right? But the point is, it's considered fair. By default, if I have a croissant and you don't have one, and we're good friends and we're walking to university or whatever, then I just take my croissant and you're a very good friend of mine. I give you half. I don't give you a little, come half, because half is fair.
Yeah.
So very interesting. And the drama is in this leading CRM. I was talking to the CEO of that leading CRM, Imomig, a friend of mine called Patrick, and he was saying, agents, they signed the agreement with the secret hope that the other one will refer, and no one refers. It's not being used. Mm-hmm. And so we bypass this by saying, hey, we source mandates by pitching to the end user, the seller, the house seller. We pitch to them you're going to get this great product with the 3 agents comparison and the 2 bank valuation and the incentive system. And we acquire the mandates ourselves and we give them to the agents. And we don't even take 50% because since we're not an agent and we're not want to negotiate, and we wanted to ensure that everyone plays ball with us, we take a lot less than 50%.
That was actually the next question I've been having. How is your business model working?
We take a cut, but we don't take 50.
Okay.
We take somewhere between 20 and 35. It depends on the modalities of the transfer and how captive the client is and so on, and the location as well.
I have another question. Maybe we can go a little bit towards business building. You are a very successful business builder also with your experience. And since I'm also in the journey of building my own business, I know the challenges. Where do you basically see your secret sauce in being successful and doing it fast, doing it properly, and going there?
Have you seen Kung Fu Panda 1?
No.
I have 3 kids. They're 8, 6, and 4, and I've seen all the Kung Fu Panda movies and Despicable Me and you name it. In Kung Fu Panda 1, the Kung Fu Panda works with his dad to make the best noodle soup in the world. And he always says, when will you teach me about the secret ingredient? And he learns at some point from his father that there is no secret ingredient. The secret sauce is there's no secret sauce. There's no shortcut. I don't think there is a shortcut. Let's just put it like this. I don't think there is a shortcut. And I think you have to work hard is just one of those prerequisites. It's the hygiene. If you don't execute, nothing happens. But you have to be focused and obsessed on the value that gets delivered from what you produce. If what you produce brings value, and you can say, I will bring value to 40% of the world's population by giving them iPhones, then that's one thing. Or you can have a super niche and say, I will work with probably 700 people in Switzerland, which is, the top agents in any given location. But to them, we'll provide extreme value. And we will work with, a couple hundred of house sellers per year, obviously tendency growing. And we will deliver incredible value to those people, even if at first it's detrimental to business model, scale effects, and so on. We've done a lot of things manually before they were automated, even the selection of the 3 agents, the way I described before. You need to be obsessed about delivering value to partners and customers. Partners for us, the agents, customers, the house sellers. If you're obsessed about this, and you're willing to adjust your solution, because we've tinkered quite a bit with the solution. It wanted to be a self-service app for real estate agent contracts at the start. And in the end, it's something completely different. So you're willing to adapt, you're reasonable enough to adapt, and you obsess about the value you produce. And then on top of that, to power it, you work hard, and you get a team together who believes in this mission, in those objectives, and who also works hard. And then only if you put all of that together, will it move inches. I have lunch with friends all the time. They go like, hey, how long have you been doing Bestag? And I go like, how long do you think? It must have been 3 years now. And I go like, yeah, next month it's 7 years. People don't realize how long you've been at it because it moves so slowly, right? But it's okay. It's okay if you can reach a cruise speed where you're not burning through insane amounts of money that you don't have. But the secret ingredient is there's no secret ingredient. Or if there's a secret ingredient, obsess about the value you bring to your clients. And you don't need to obsess about capturing it. I always take the example, if Apple produces something that's worth 10 francs or $10, whatever, they will want to capture 8.5 out of them. And that's fine, good for them. And if Amazon creates something that creates $10 of value to their customers, they will look at it and say, oh, we produce it for 50 cents, we're going to sell it for 90 cents. And the $9.1, congratulations, clients, you can have it. And the result is, in terms of Amazon, is that people are so on board because they get stuff at prices that they never thought they could have, and they get free delivery. And when I lived in the US, you get within 24 hours delivery. It's so amazing. But it doesn't matter how much of the value you capture and you actually invoice, but if you create value, and you can increase the value you create over time, and you're really obsessed about it, then the referral that is built in your product has an inbuilt referral system, right? And we grow 30% year on year in terms of mandates. We've been growing 30% year on year since we established the base at some point. And the big point is, some of that traffic we buy from Google, and we pay good money to Google to send people on our website and transform them into leads. And this costs a bunch of money. And the other half, it's half of our business, and that's a lot of money, and it's very scary.
It's referred.
And the other half is referred.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the other half is free, because people are so enthusiastic about you, either evangelists who stand on the side and are not really former clients, but they believe in what you've told them, or people who have actually sold with you. And we have a network of lawyers and people who take care of, will execution. And they say, oh, I will never sell a house with another provider than Bestag. So they refer, and they keep referring. And so that's the story, right? Obsess about the value and basically work hard. If you think about it, if you were a burger restaurant, you would fully expect to do 1,000 burgers every day and to not burn one. Right? You need to take care of every client, and every burger you start from scratch, and you might burn it, but you take care not to burn it. So it's a lot of hard work, I guess, but it's obsessive about client value.
If I may ask you, is it very operational? Because in my head, quite easy. You have I know I'm playing devil's advocate right now, but it's like you have a lead coming in, zip code, look up to the best agents, direct automated message to them. Hey, we have a request. Would you be interested? They respond. They say, I'm in. You do a quick maybe it goes a little bit like manual, but handy. Maybe you have a call. Maybe you dig a bit deeper, and then you forward this one again, potentially automatically, to the potential client with hiding the contact information, obviously, because you want to make sure that they are not going off platform contract, and then you leave it up to them, and then you bring them together. Do I miss anything, or is it much more than that?
It's pretty much that. We have tinkered and tried, with the product until we really thought it was stable. And now we're finalizing the rollout of an automated workflow in-house to allow our client advisor to do exactly what you said. And at some point we want to provide it maybe as a self-service. Let's see. But the big point is we need to sell that magical miracle of a product, because we haven't raised, millions in venture capital, and we don't blow through crazy advertising money, which means any given client, if they're referred to us, you need to kind of explain to them and make them land in the system and in the fact that, no, we're not coming with a very good camera to make pictures and then put it online. We're setting it up, which is an upfront additional process. People are already overwhelmed with their sale, right? Biggest financial transaction in your life. You do it twice in your life. in Switzerland, statistically 0.7 times every Swiss person will sell a house, but there's only a third of owners. So it's like 2.1 times for the owner class, if you will. So that sale that you will do twice in your life, people are completely overwhelmed, and you're telling them, oh, we're going to take a process and put it ahead of that process. And so we need to have people land, and we need to explain. And so by automating the work, as you've described it, really not so far from exactly what you described, by automating that, we free up time for our people to spend even more time talking with the people. There's 4 people who sell. There's old people who reduce the size of their house because they're in a big house in the suburbs, and they need to take the car all the time and stairs, and that's bad for them. So they're moving out. There's people who've inherited, people who divorce, and there's people who had bought something small and who want to sell because they want something bigger, or they're moving. So it's basically people who found families, or people who have a family with 1 kid and suddenly they had 2 kids, it was still okay, but now they have 3, they need to move. So of all those people, you have 3 people who are in this situation of emotional distress, inheritance, divorce, and the old people, because they change house because the wife has just broken the hip. I'm mentioning that at the start of the discussion. So you need to babysit them, and they're going to be easily overwhelmed by a process that is high stakes and that they know nothing about or very little about. And so there's a lot of added value in our people facing off with the clients and helping them and showing them the way and being very professional about it. So we want to minimize the admin process work. If you need to schedule the visit of 3 agents with a client, it's a Calendly. It's not much more than that. Yes. So all of that should be automated, but as long as the product doesn't completely sell itself, because we're a huge brand and everyone has heard about us, which will take another X years, we need to kind of babysit the people into the process. And right now, when we get the 5 evaluations, our advisor will read the 5 evaluation and do a synthesis of what it means. We're piloting, feeding those 5 reports to AI and say, hey, what do you think? By the way, here's the track record of 600 other transactions or 800 other transactions. Here's a new one. What do you think? And so, yes, let's do away with everything that's not landing people in a process that's complex, scary, and high stakes for them. And all the rest, yes, automate. Click buttons. Definitely.
Patrice, I learned a lot. I know your time is very limited, and has been very, very interesting, very insightful. I would definitely like to have you on the show again in a couple of months. You taught us a lot about, first and foremost, why you jumped into real estate, but other things, the lack of academic papers in the real estate industry about real estate agents, even though it's the biggest asset class out there. You told us exactly about how you started with a very manual approach. I think that's the way to go always. I think the most successful new businesses always start with a very manual approach, and then afterwards they see okay, how can we automate and process it or productize it. You gave us a very interesting idea of why using it, and also the incentive dilemma which agents have, not being properly incentivized to even sell higher because it's only a very small marginal benefit they're having, but potentially much more work for that. You also gave us a very nice overview on where you think the market is heading, and also where you are. Where do you want to go, and why there's this very, very interesting niche. And finally, you also gave us a very good approach on how to run the business, what it takes to make it profitable and also successful, and maybe also a little bit a glance on what are the next steps and what we can imagine. Is there anything you would like to share with the audience which you haven't shared with us, and something you would like to leave with us?
You know what? I'm just looking at my notes, and there's 4 buckets of things that you and I had talked about and we haven't talked about. So I'll definitely come again, talk about, the costs of real estate transactions, how agents influence the price, how auctions can be a trap, and rules and regulations about real estate agents. But my closing words is setting the price. And for all the community of real estate agents who are listening to us and watching us, setting the price is crucial, and clients don't understand it. So if I would say there's one thing that as a community real estate agents we need to educate the people about, is that setting the price is very difficult. And because the people are just always recurringly coming back to what they think the house is worth or the property is worth. And if that is set properly, it's helpful. And if that is set improperly, it will destroy your deal.
Perfect. How can people reach out to you? What are contact information, and what is basically the places where can people contact you?
Yes, Patrice.Choffat at bestag.ch. And I can be reached by email. That's the most convenient way of being in touch with me.
Perfect. And I will also obviously leave the URL to your website in the show notes. Patrice, thank you so much. And I definitely think we should talk soon about the topics we haven't talked today. And I'm sending the best regards to you. And we talk soon.
Perfect. Michael, see you soon. Ciao.
Bye-bye. Thanks. This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description.